So welcome everyone. I hope everyone is staying safe, fine amidst this COVID situation and then the cyclone that recently hit the West Coast here. Today, maybe we can go to the next slide. The topic we all know, cloud first apps on Microsoft Azure. I'm hosting here this webinar with my colleague Vikram Pense.
Hi.
Vikram is a very well-known speaker. He's a cloud solution architect, and he is Microsoft's most valuable professional for many years in a row, and has been recognized by Microsoft and multiple forums across the globe for exceptional technical know-how on Microsoft Azure and willingness to share that knowledge across the community. So, welcome Vikram here, and
Thank
thanks
you,
for
Girish.
sparing time and putting this content for all of us.
Thanks.
And I'm hosting this. My name is Girish Chandra, and I'm Chief Evangelist at EaseEst, and I also lead the Microsoft Technology Center for Excellence along with other technology alliances. It gives me immense pleasure to host, ask some questions, make life miserable for Vikram if I ask some tough questions here, and take it from there. Before we jump into the topic of the day, I just want to give a quick view of what EaseEst is. We are based in Hanover in Germany. We got offices in Detroit in US, Hanover, Germany, Austria, Vienna, and our global development center is in Pune in India. We are in business for over 20 years now, fairly big size team working on multiple technologies, including Microsoft, Amazon, the Adobe stack, and the online data warehouse technologies like Snowflake. We've done some good job. I invite all of the attendees here to visit EaseEst website and get to know more about EaseEst. Quickly on what makes us Azure experts, I want to talk maybe 30 seconds on our Azure capabilities. So we've been doing advisory and architecture services, migration and modernization services, DevOps, which we actually went through some details last week. We do 24/7 managed services, and we do offer security and compliances, which has become a most important aspect these days because all of us are working from home and we are all connected in a different type of internet environments and technologies. So that kind of cloud security and measuring that cloud security is equally important these days. So with this, I think with this quick overview, my next thing would be to invite Vikram to start his talk on the topic of the day. And I'm sure, Vikram, if you go to the next slide, which is yours, I guess. Building cloud first apps using Azure. I know you want to talk a lot of technology, you're going to cover a few things. But when I was talking to some of our people, on LinkedIn, people kept on asking me some suggestions.
Yeah.
Some of the suggestions are also that at different time, whenever you build an argument on something, it's also a good idea for you to give an example around it. That's something will help. Maybe give a walkthroughs if possible, if you are already ready for it anywhere. And also tell the audience if something has triggered you or your customer in moving something from to a destination of Microsoft Azure. So before you start, all of the attendees here, once again, welcome. And if you have any questions, please add those up in the chat window. I'm sure I will catch the attention to it and then ask those to you. Okay, ask those on your behalf to Vikram. So go ahead, Vikram, it's all yours.
Sure. Thank you. So thanks, EaseEst team and Girish and everyone. As Girish mentioned, it's a difficult time. We started with COVID this year, and now we have cyclone and a lot of things. But one thing, interesting thing happening that people are now using this time seriously. They are investing it very seriously. They are learning new technologies and new skills around for their upcoming projects and jobs. So that is a key thing. And one important thing out of that, which Girish already mentioned, is remotely working. So we had a Azure DevOps webinar like this in the last week, where we demonstrated how you can work remotely in a secure way, how you can create a secure environment and build your projects. Now, kind of complement to that, we are now going a step ahead, and today we are going to talk. This is our topic: building cloud first apps using Microsoft Azure. So Azure is the cloud platform from Microsoft. We all know it is there from last many years, last 10 plus years. You can started with year 2009 as a baby project within Microsoft as Red Dog. And eventually from Windows Azure, we saw the journey, how Microsoft embraced open source, and now how from Windows Azure, it becomes a Microsoft Azure platform. So today we are going to see how we can build cloud first apps. So deploying applications, deploying workload on Azure, those apps, and building a scratch app, and how to migrate and everything. So there are different set of applications. So today our focus is how we can build end-to-end applications on Azure using Azure services rather than solely dependent on third-party on-premise services. Of course, in this presentation, I'll be touching upon a little bit of infra side and a little bit of hybrid side as well. But our primary focus will be on right from scratch how we can build the cloud first applications using the Azure platform and services. So one of the important slide of this entire presentation is how organizations should look at the cloud apps development post COVID. So we saw there is a humongous you can say outrage, or you can say a lot of shift happening to on the web for conducting meetings and doing the collaboration. So we saw various tools into discussion like Zoom and Google and Microsoft Teams. So Microsoft Teams recently reported 72% of highest utilization ever. That's kind of a super adoption of Microsoft Teams, which is a collaboration platform.
Correct, which is like the daily active usage has gone up
Daily
tremendously. Yeah,
yeah.
correct. Yeah.
And even if you see, so I have a quick chart, although I'm not a financial expert, but this is something every developer, junior developer can also understand from looking at the numbers. So this is the ecosystem. These are the closing financial year-end results Microsoft reported. So there are three main segments if we talk about the entire Microsoft ecosystem. First is productivity and business processes, which talks usually about your office revenue, your Dynamics and other products. Then intelligent cloud talks about your Azure-based services, Azure hosted services, AI, and personal computing, again the traditional Windows ecosystem. So if you see, there is a tremendous growth. So you can see around 27% YOY growth, and reported around 12.3 billions of profitability only for Azure. On the left hand side, you can see two images, which these are lively captured images captured during Microsoft Ignite 2019 keynote, which is keynote, which has happened in October 2019. The top image says there are 61% job openings for developer outside tech industry, which is a bit surprising. Even I was very much surprised to see this number, because uh, till last year, most of us have a notion that all developers belong to IT company. But looking at the last 2 years, 3 years shift into the overall IT spectrum, there is a lot of adoption happening of IT, of cloud, of AI services into non-IT services as well. So you can see other industries and tech industries ratio over in the below image. So there are tremendous job opportunities, openings, and businesses happening in the non-tech industry as well, but using the tech platform. So let's take an example, e-commerce company or a hotel industry or a airline industry. Traditionally, they are running their entire workload on on-premise. Now they are also started talking about lifting their applications to Azure, and they are trying to get the benefits of security, scalability, and everything. So that's why that industry, although it's not a core IT services, now also thinking about building some kind of apps and some kind of systems which they don't want to take it on cloud and leverage the benefits like other industries. The first thing is reaching out to market very fastly. We call it as go-to-market strategy, and securing your entire workload, securing your data. Because in last 2 3 years before COVID, we saw there are a lot of discussions happen within the IT organizations about data privacy security, especially when GDPR came into picture. So to address those kind of regulations, people started embracing cloud and they started building solutions around it. So this is the spectrum of revenue for Microsoft. And although there is a pandemic happening right now, we are all in lockdown, and now unlockdown also started 1.0. But the cloud adoption didn't stop at all. So cloud adoption is still in place, and people are still building apps on Azure. So let me talk about what is cloud first on Microsoft. So these are some of the questions which people normally ask. When people started embracing cloud, there are a lot of terminologies as cloud native, cloud first, multi-cloud, and all those things. So let's talk about first simple terminologies, and then we'll get to the actual core services of Azure. So is cloud native and cloud first same? So yes, cloud first or cloud native, born in cloud, something we call it as applications which are born in cloud or fully built on top of cloud services are cloud first application. If you see Satya Nadella, who is a CEO of Microsoft, recently made a comment about Azure that Azure is world's computer. So Azure as a computer or Azure as a cloud platform, they are calling it as a world's computer. And if you see when Satya Nadella became CEO of Microsoft, he started building a revolution on the cloud-based platform. That time, the quote was a little different. That time it was mobile first, cloud first. So when Microsoft really started pushing cloud into multiple industries, all their partners, customers, and they also started embracing mobile-based technology, so people can have services on different devices like IoT edge, mobile devices, tablets, and all those things. So that time the tagline was cloud first, mobile first. If you see all the historic announcements of Microsoft, you can find this line, cloud first, mobile first. So from that, people started building those terminals as cloud first application. So I want to build a cloud first application. And then people started, when they started embracing cloud, they fully settled on cloud, then they started talking about then microservices, cloud native applications. So basically cloud native or cloud first is building your applications end to end using Azure services. So is it a complete Azure PaaS or serverless? So serverless, when we talk about, is generally you use serverless technology when we build microservices application. Later in this presentation, I'm going to touch base the microservices concept. So I'll be talking more on that. So right now we'll see most of it. It will be a platform services because the idea or the focus is not creating or spending much of a time and energy on complex infrastructure, rather than leveraging the available services which are scalable, secure, easy to maintain. So most of the time it is uh, fall into bucket of PaaS. Then the next question usually asked about these applications, is it costlier than infrastructure? If you migrate your apps from on-premise using Azure Migrate or a site migration recovery or something like that, the other tools, you can as is lift and shift those applications on Azure. Although then they are first citizen on Azure, they will start embracing again Azure PaaS services as well along with infra services. But to maintain that infrastructure, there will be a cost associated. We all know that for Azure infrastructure as services, we need to create high availability. Then we need to do the patch management, hardening of OS, and all those things, risk management, everything. So there is an effort, man effort, there is a scripting effort, development effort associated. So people usually tend to build Azure PaaS services. Sometimes it is not directly possible to build application in PaaS services as is lift and shift, but there are a couple of stages when we talk about migration. But yes, if you are planning a brand new application right from scratch, you just got the business requirement and there's a green field, then definitely it is worth going for platform services from the cost perspective. Another question is there a big learning curve for developers? So during pandemic, we saw on a couple of social media channels as well, a lot of people, including the top companies, CTO, CIOs, doing Azure fundamental certification, AZ900 exam. You must have seen that. A lot of people are doing different cloud certifications.
Yep, I noticed that. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so this is an, we call it a need of a time. So you have to have a certification, and traditionally the way Microsoft used to treat the certification as under a single tag of MCSD and MCSA or something like that. Now they have come up with a role-based certification. So if you are passionate about data science and AI, you have a different track of AI certifications. You are passionate about Azure architecture and development, then you have Azure certifications. And then if you are a citizen developer, you can take the Power Apps and Dynamics related certifications. So Azure, please understand that Azure Cloud is a hosting platform to its core. What we are doing is we are deploying our apps and leveraging the Azure services. So is there a learning curve? There is a slightly learning curve. So what is that learning curve? It's about the architecting your application, how you, so we can see at the bottom of this slide, there are 5 pillars: design, scalability, cost, maintenance, and uptime. So how your application can touch those 5 pillars, that's something you have to thought of. And that's where the learning curve is. So even if you're a .NET developer, you don't need to learn anything new, because you can still build web applications using MVC, Angular. If you are a Java developer, that is still fine. If you are a PHP developer, still is okay. Still you can deploy it. As I mentioned earlier, Microsoft is leading open source contributor, and you can deploy your open source apps on Azure as well. So learning curve is just to understand basic services of Azure. So that's the only learning curve. So it is not at all difficult for any developers, even if it's a college graduate or a 10 years experience developer, to deploy or build cloud first apps. So do we need to spend a lot of cost, man efforts in environment setup? That's an interesting question. Part of it we already covered in our last webinar on DevOps. So yes, so there is a lot of cost and efforts associated, although we have a lot of fancy PowerShell scripts and ARM templates to roll up environments speedily, but still there is some amount of effort is required to build that environment setup. But with Azure Dev Test offerings, it is still much more less than doing it manually. So yes, there is a little bit of cost and man efforts in the initially, but it depends on scenario. It can be optimized very well. I'll talk about more in the later slides. Can a multi-cloud app can be called as cloud first? Answer to this question, this is a very debatable question I have picked from many forums. So multi-cloud,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, some people wish to run their apps on AWS as well as on Azure. Part of it on AWS, part of it on Azure. So will you call it as a cloud first? So eventually for that particular cloud, you can call it as cloud
first. Yeah.
end to end. But if it using more than one cloud services, then we usually call it as a multi-cloud services. And there are a lot of people still going multi-cloud, and there are many now started experiencing the pain in maintaining the multiple clouds. So they are now, most of them, shifting back to Azure from the other platforms and now focusing fully on cloud first applications. So 5 pillars of cloud first is scalability, your uptime, design, cost, and maintenance. So these are basic principles, how you design your application on Azure, whether it is friendly to integrate platform services, whether it is scalable. So if you have multi country model or multiple people across the world going to access it, is it scalable? During the festival, if it's an e-commerce site, during the festival season, whether it will be able to scale to take that much thousands and millions of workload. Cost in non-seasonal time when it is idle, whether you can scale down and scale up the environment. Maintenance, whether you need to dedicatedly monitor it, maintain it, do the patching, all that you have to look at. So these are the basic 5 pillars. And if you go to Microsoft documentation, there are different design patterns as well. So I'll just quickly move to next slide.
Sure. Before you do that, I'm sure everyone is able to hear Vikram.
Yes. I hope I am. So can I continue? Okay. As you speak, can I continue? I hope I'm audible to all. Hello.
Yes, you are, Vikram.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Let's go back, and so this is the Azure spectrum of services and type of developer we want to look at today. So Azure as a cloud platform capable of hosting multiple set of applications and different set of services. So Power Apps and automation, you can build citizen developers apps. I'll talk about Power Apps in the later at the end of presentation, how to build those apps. Then we have serverless and PaaS applications. We can run and leverage our AI applications and AI services. So AI covers everything. It covers cognitive services. It covers your machine learning algorithms, running your machine learning models, and data science and analytics. And also your IoT and edge devices can access the Azure services. So configuring those, you can build and deploy your application. Then there is another piece of data and analytics. And then as a developer, what you need or what you require to these kind of data-driven apps is different language support tools and SDKs, which we are going to talk about. The important part on this particular slide is the category of developers. So till now, rather before Microsoft make it as a different category of citizen developers, we all were under the umbrella of single developer tag, where we used to code. Even IT managers and administrators fall under this bucket. They used to the DevOps scripts, environment scripts, PowerShell scripts, CLI scripts, and our C# developers, Python developers. Everyone were under a single category of developers. Now there is a different set of developers who can still leverage Azure services, which we call it as, rather Microsoft call it as a citizen developer. It is a very important category because there is a lot of traction around this particular application development. Again, it's a cloud first application development because all your Power Apps and automation and the services which we use like Flow and other AI services are backed by Microsoft Azure. So citizen developer is the category of new development model under the Microsoft ecosystem, which uses no code or low code. So you don't have to write any single line of code and still you can build the apps. Although they are not large, these can from small apps to large complex enterprise apps as well. So it's not like that you just write kind of a hello world app, but you can write very serious apps using the citizen developers tools and technology. So at the end of presentation, I'm going to quickly go you a walkthrough about the citizen developer as well. So two important aspects, two important developer categories these days, developers and citizen developers. And now for cloud ecosystem, both are equally important. So citizen developer also matters a lot to all the organizations. So there is a lot of serious activities are going on to build, integrate end-to-end workflows as well. So a lot of new services or new projects are getting kicked off on citizen developers as well. Rather, COVID situation itself given a lot of traction to citizen developers. If you see the conversation platforms like Bot Framework for Microsoft AI, the Apollo chat for COVID patients, or the Arogya Setu kind of apps, or different apps which Italian government and other United Nations are building up, are based on the citizen developers, where they quickly spinning up the applications. I have also seen a couple of applications where within 2 or 3 days time, people are rolling out apps like how many beds are there in hospital, how many doctors are available, and all those things, basic symptoms of coronavirus. All those don't require a large complex setups like Visual Studio and SQL Server. You can just use CDS, Common Data Services, and low code, no code platform like Power Apps, and you can still spin it up, and you can use it for a large audience. So let me go to next slide. So different components and DevOps for developers. So we have, so how you can build the apps. So for building apps, you already have .NET frameworks and other language frameworks. On top of that, to leverage Azure services, there are SDKs available, which we allow you to consume those NuGet packages. You can use those API endpoints. And so each services like storage service and other monitoring services like Application Insight will give you API endpoint. You can consume data, you can consume those services, you can push your data, and you can view it in the Azure portal as well. So there are two types of SDKs, Azure Unified SDK and Azure SDK. So what is Unified SDK and Azure SDK? So Unified SDK is basically a collection of entire set of libraries for .NET, Java, Python, and JavaScript together, which we can use in your Visual Studio environment or Visual Studio Code environment. And language SDK is a specific language-specific SDKs built for a specific language like Java and Python and .NET. So these are two SDKs. CLI and PowerShell scripting is usually used for building your infrastructure, writing PowerShell scripts for adding users. There are a lot of activities you can do on Active Directory using PowerShell. You can create, manage virtual machines using those CLIs and scripts. So for IT admins and there are other developers as well who can build automation on top of CLI and PowerShell scripts. Standalone tools, so you have Storage Explorer and Data Studio. Besides Storage Explorer and Data Studio, you also have Service Bus Explorer. If you want to see what all messages are getting passed on your Service Bus topics and queues. Storage Explorer is available on Windows, Linux, and Mac. So you can connect to your Azure storage. You can access tables, queues, and your files as well, Azure files. And you can also have a Cosmos DB connection as well. After this slide, I'll show you the tools and services walkthrough. Visual Studio definitely required for writing code. So Visual Studio connected services. So Visual Studio 2019 or 2018 older version, if you have, you can download SDK and start working on it. So they have a connected experience from 2019 where, you know, it's kind of a wizard base. You can deploy your web application from Visual Studio. You can see your application inside from Visual Studio, all those things. Visual Studio Code is for usually for open source developers run on non-Windows platform. And code spaces is something new, which I will give you just a glimpse of a code space at the end of our presentation. So code spaces got introduced in Microsoft Build recently, where it is a browser-based kind of a version of your Visual Studio Code, where you can plug it to your GitHub repo and start building and debugging the code. Then you have Azure Dev and Test environments, which are pre-configured, which comes with pre-configured Visual Studio and tools required for building your applications. And of course, DevOps and Power Apps and Power Automation Studio for your citizen developers. So let's switch from PowerPoint to Azure Portal. I'll give you a walkthrough of the tools, how they are. So let me quickly share my other screen. So you can see, I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, it is.
Yes. So on azure.com/downloads, you can see there are different set of SDKs available, which called as unified SDKs. You can see, as I mentioned, it is a collection of libraries for your Java, JavaScript, and Python. So you can see the different unified SDKs over here. It is also available for Mac and Visual Studio on Mac. And then there are specific language. So if you are a Google Go developer, PHP developer, Python developer, you can use these SDKs over here. You can see there is for .NET, TypeScript, all the major development platforms got covered over here. Command line, as I mentioned, Azure CLI command interface, storage emulator, which I'm going to show over here. It's a storage emulator. Then AZ copy and PowerShell installation, and standalone tools like Storage Explorer, Data Studio, and Cloud Shell. In your Azure portal also, you have shell over here from which you can toggle between your bash and PowerShell. You can see there is a bash and PowerShell option. You can fire your scripts from here as well. And then recently they announced Windows Terminal as well. So there also you can build the scripts over there. So let me quickly show you the, so this is my Azure Storage Explorer. And you can see, I can see my multiple subscriptions over here. Okay. And there are different storage accounts I have. So if I go over here, this is a classic, and I can see different blob containers where I can have my VHDs, I can have my images, blob or page blob. I have queues over here. You can see there is a file share as well. So I have created demo directory over here. I have a sample queue as well over here where I can add enqueue and dequeue messages from my application, or I can test it from here as well. And tables, again, these are not like SQL tables. These are your key value tables. So you can see I have created a key value table over here as well. So you can query this particular table from here. You can import data, you can export data because everything is connected to your Azure subscription and particular storage account. So you can add storage account over here as well. You can also add you can see Azure Connect Storage. You can add using a connection string. You can, if you have a subscription, you can toggle that subscription. There are different environments like Azure, Azure China. So if you are building applications for Chinese government or government specific applications like US government, you can use these environments. By default, it's Azure. And then you can attach with the local email address. So once you do the changes, the synchronization happens between two. You can add connection string and so on and so forth. Similarly, you can add Cosmos DB account. It's in preview, so you can see the details of your data from the Cosmos DB collection. And then there is another studio which is called as Azure Data Studio. I'll just show you the glimpse. So this is your Azure Data Studio where you can download DACPack. You can query your environment. You can see that you can do the deployments as well from here. So this is your Data Studio, and this is your Azure Studio. As I mentioned, this Storage Explorer is available on Windows and non-Windows environment as well. Okay. So let me go to Visual Studio Code Spaces. I will do a sign now. So I can create a code space over here. I can connect with my repo and GitHub. I'll just show you the glimpse how it look like your Visual Studio Code. This is recently announced. So this is a web-based, you can see web-based visualstudio.com site. So if you are traveling, if you are at different place, not in office, working remotely, and if you don't have Visual Studio on your machine, so you can use online instance of Visual Studio and still you can connect with your development team, do the debugging and everything. Okay, I think there are some issues. I'll try to create a new environment. This might be a little buggy because it's in preview, so I'll just say test. It will ask me for a GitHub repository, which I can give it later, and I'll just say create. So you can use Visual Studio, like you have Visual Studio instance on your 2017, 2019, whichever version you have. You can use Visual Studio Code, and you can use the code spaces as well, which is completely online environment. So till that spin-ups, let's get back to slides, and I'll come back to this instance again. I think it got loaded.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Yeah. So you can see you can create a new file, you can start writing your code, and you can open a folder over here. So existing workspace, you can also see I have a workspace already created over here. And the entire interface, you can see it's more like your Visual Studio Code. You can replicate your Visual Studio Code themes and everything over here by signing in, because you are using the same credentials of Outlook. And then you can change the color theme, keyboard setting, everything. You can connect with your repo. So you can do end-to-end development from here as well. Of course, there are some extensions will be required to install because you are running a browser, but Visual Studio Code Spaces will help you to install those plugins. It will notify you, and you have to just install it from your browser, and you can start working on it. Of course, it's a cross browser, so it doesn't mean it runs only on Edge and Internet Explorer. It runs on Chromium and other browsers as well. Okay, let me go back to. Okay. So let's now focus on how we saw the environment and the tools required, SDK required. Now let us visualize and understand there are multiple layers of applications in your apps where you build front layer, middle layer, and back layer. So in normally, if you consider 3-tier application, you have front-end tier, you have middle tier of business logic where you write your services, projects, APIs, or maybe another layer of APIs, and then you have backend tool or where you have a backend layer of APIs which talks to your data collection, and then the actual backend services. So in this particular Cloud First development, we consider 3 tiers. So web tier, what services, Azure services can be utilized. In middle layer and in back layer data pool, we'll look at. So there are app services. App services comes under Azure Platform Services. So if you want to host your web application, with respect to it's a PHP website or MVC website or classic ASP website, you can still host it on Azure Infrastructure as Services, where you have to spin up a Windows or Linux virtual machine, configure your IIS or Apache Tomcat, and then you can run your PHP. Even your Magento side you can run, your .NET side you can run. If you want to leverage PaaS, which we have mentioned over here, you can use Azure Web Apps. Then there are API apps, mobile apps, and logic apps. So under app services, we have these 4 flavors. Web apps is basically used for deploying your web applications. You don't have to create a virtual machine to spin your website. There is already environment which you can select. So it will ask you what kind of CPU and what kind of memory you want to select for this web app. And underneath the sandbox is already created for you in terms of a VM. So all you have to do is just deploy it on slots. So it provides you multiple slots like staging and production. You can configure slots and deploy a web application. API in a similar way, you can deploy your web APIs over there. And recently got announced for building a static web applications, Azure come up with a new service called as Static Web App. Although it's very recently announced last week, so we don't have much of the documentation right now on it. But I have just shown the diagram, architecture diagram of Static Web App. So basically, you can have a repo in your GitHub, and it's basically a static web app with your app services feature. So you can do the CI/CD in terms of GitHub, and you can deploy a static website on Azure, and you can also leverage the serverless API functions for your static web apps. So this is about the web app layer. Now in data services, we have different offerings. Like if you are building a hybrid application, you can still tag to your on-premise SQL Server from your web app. Then you have SQL on Azure, so it is Azure SQL Server, Azure Managed Instance. You can run SQL Server whole capabilities on Azure. Again, it is without creating those complex infrastructure which you used to create for SQL Server always on using Azure virtual machines. Then for open source, you have Cassandra, you have MongoDB, you have MariaDB, MySQL. For open source non-relational SQL, NoSQL workload. Then you have specific very popular data service as Azure Cosmos DB. Basically allows you to connect to Cosmos DB collection using different set of APIs like storage APIs, Gremlin APIs, and you can use your SQL type queries on top of your JSON collection as well. So Cosmos DB globally distributed multi-master RAID. It is most fastest database for accessing your data. And then again for big data, you have Azure SQL Data Warehouse. Snowflakes on Azure is also supported. Now Azure also came up with online data warehousing services as Synapse. I'll also put a glimpse of Synapse over here. Mm-hmm. Additionally, for your Horton and HD Insight, you have HD Insight services. Databricks for creating pipelines. But now that Databricks and Data Factory entire pipeline experience and creating that now merged into Synapse. And stream analytics and analytics for streaming your data from storage SQL to your analytic, your machine learning models, and then visualize using Power BI, which is again a Office service but running on Azure at the behind. So Azure Synapse, I'll just quickly toggle my screen and go to Azure portal to show you Azure Synapse, and we'll show you how Azure Synapse looks like. So I have a environment here. I will.
And this is not in preview, right, Vikram? Or this is still in preview time?
Azure Synapse still in preview.
Okay. Okay.
So
Any RTM, like any timeline?
No, in Ignite 2019 they announced Synapse. It was
Okay.
private preview for multiple customers having massive workload. Now during recent week ago build event they made it a preview available for public.
Okay, good. So we are able to create some proof of concept or something. Go ahead. Thank you.
So Synapse workspace I have created. You can create from here, create resource. And this is my Synapse dashboard. You can see I have SQL pools and Apache pools, and I can manage identities, access, and firewall settings from here. This is basic dashboard. The actual dashboard is your Synapse Studio. So I'll go over here. You can also see other options like SQL pool and Apache Spark. I'll go to Synapse Studio. So it will open a new window for me. You can see Azure Synapse Analytics. So what is the purpose of Azure Synapse Analytics? So basically, we all developers, front-end developers and middle-tier developers focusing on .NET, and then there are a set of other developers which we call as database developers, admins, and SQL developers, which used to create schema, store procedures, functions, triggers for us in database, and we used to migrate schema to Azure. Then there are different set of teams working on data science to, parse that data, make that data readable, and make that data logically accepted and everything, and then build model on top of it and give it predictions. So again, we used to have another set of developers to build a visualization experience. Like you have Tableau reports, you have Power BI reports. So there is a visualize team. Now Microsoft with Synapse trying to collaborate all those developers together in one unified workspace. So logically, that's Synapse is that logical workspace where you can ingest your data, explore data. You can see on the screen over here, you can ingest your data, you can explore data. I mean, explore means you can fire a query and see how much time it takes. You can fine tune it. You can analyze your data. You can run your big data models, and you can also associate the same with, if you can create pipelines over here, you can same attach it to your visualization on Power BI. And this is very much powerful. All the basic features we used to see in different tools now came together as a unified experience. So for example, if I want to ingest data, you can see I have different connection and data set. I can, set a connection over here. I can get data from Azure services. So I'll go over here. So I can take it from file and folders. I can take it from database. I can create a new database connection over here. So if I want to take it from Amazon Redshift, I can bring data from Amazon Redshift. Of course, as I mentioned, it is in preview, so there will be a little bit of glitches. I have a DB2, I have a SQL managed instance, Custode Data Explorer, and then Hive, and there are multiple options, even Microsoft Access and Oracle database. And for your Azure related services, as I have shown, Azure Storage Explorer, we can connect to Azure Storage. So similarly, you can pull that storage data from this option. You can give the connection string. You have a Cosmos Mongo connector. You have a Cosmos DB SQL API, Data Lake, Azure MySQL, a plethora of options available. Your data may also have in file format like JSON or in S3. You can connect to S3 bucket. You can do the FTP. Of course, everything runs on a secret pattern, so you don't have to worry about authentication, authorization, and such. ODBC, Open Data Center, SharePoint Online List, NoSQL, and other services and apps. So Marketplace, Web Apps, common data services which we use for Power BI, for Citizen Developer, Dynamic 365. So every other data source is available, and you can ingest data from every other data source practically. Although it's in preview, there might be, if anything missing, they will add eventually. And then in Explorer, if you go to Explorer, you can write new script. I have some sample script created already on a sample schema. So like SQL instance, you can do the query plan over here. I'll show you. So I have a couple of records over here. You can see, I'll just drag it a little bit. So I have some data coming from my table. The best part of Synapse is if you analyze this particular experience with your on-premise SQL Server, we just used to see the data in this kind of a grid row fashion, but now you can see, and you can export as well your queries, and you can see the immediate visualization of your queries right over here. Then you can in the chart type and everything. So although if you are not a Power BI developer, still you can, if you want a small reports to present to your boss or your customer immediately on data, and you don't have all the time in the world to create those Power BI dashboards and charts over here, you can save them as images and you can put it across. So if I go back to table, I can export this table. So if I want to refine my data and hand it over to my machine learning team or even the data science team, I can still export it in CSV JSON, so they get further pass that data. And so very simple queries also I can export right now, and I can do a simple visualizations on top of my simple queries now. Although I'm talking as a simple query, but actually those are very far complex queries as well. But my idea is, I mean, the intention of this particular workspace is to collaborate visualization teams, data teams together, and even developers, .NET developers like us, you can see the actual data, how it looks like. So even if I am a lone contributor and lone .NET developer, and I want to see how the graph will look like on my ASP.NET MVC page. So before having that graph, I can query it over here, and I can also see how you can build the orchestration over here. This is for your pipeline performance and experiences. You can tune that over here. I'm not going to tune any queries, but I'm showing you this is how you can see the results over here, and where you can manage and create new triggers. You can put the access controls on your workspaces. So right now I'm admin, so I can add another resource and another role. So you can see workspace admin, Apache Spark admin. I can add roles from here. So it is, as I mentioned, unified collaboration kind of a studio for me. So this is just a preview of Synapse. I am also playing with it because it's just made. First, we'll spend more time on it. So I'll quickly now again go back to our presentation. So quickly, Azure Functions, again, serverless application. So it's kind of a headless. When it got launched, we started calling it as a headless because we didn't have any front end access. C# code, you can create Azure Functions. There are different triggers available. HTTP triggers. If you are creating a storage account, if a file gets into a storage account, you can still fire a trigger, and based on those triggers, you can do a different set of options. So it's kind of a orchestrator. You can connect with your different functionalities, and it's running on a serverless model. Again, you don't have to spin up a virtual machine. You can again utilize Azure Serverless using different language platforms. So recently they announced support for Python as well, although I haven't tried, but basically for C# developers is very common. So these are the few features. It's wide range of triggers available. Robust developer experience. You can have a project type as Azure Functions in your Visual Studio. You can deploy functions from Visual Studio as well, or you can create functions from your Azure portal as well. So I'll just very quickly show you the Azure functions. So you can create functions. You can see over here. There are different functions. I can add my function, add a new function over here. So these are different triggers available. So if you want to schedule something or trigger something based on timers, you have time trigger, HTTP trigger. You have service bus triggers. If a specific topic you want to trigger something, then you have service bus trigger. And then there are a lot of triggers available over here. And very commonly used is HTTP trigger. So I'll show you how HTTP triggers look like. So this is my code and test option where I can actually write code. As I mentioned, I can do that in Visual Studio as well. So you can see, and this is my code. And if I want to test it, I can test my function over here. So I can see get post. I can add a parameter like and if I have a header, I can add, and I'll just say run. And it will execute my function. So you can see the response 200 okay, and output is hello is a solution. So that's what I written in my code. String name I'm taking it, and then I'm action result is you can see action result is hello and the name, the parameter which we are sending. So this is just kind of a hello world example. You can write other complex examples over here, and this is about this is how you can write functions and test over here. Different messaging and event-driven services are also available in Azure. So Azure Service Bus is one of them. You must have seen in Azure Storage Explorer, I have shown the tables, files, and there were queues as well. But for messaging, there is a robust model, a robust service available as Azure Service Bus. You can create topic subscription model. We build a lot of IoT-based applications for our ESS customers using Azure Service Bus because we are doing cloud first development from last many years. So even in year 2014, 15 time, 15, 16 time frame where IoT Hub was in private view, was not got launched publicly. But that time still customers had their data coming from sensors. So we use Stream Analytics, we use Azure Service Bus topic and subscription. We utilize that hybrid connectivity using Service Bus. And then based on that, we created multiple web jobs to pull that data from Service Bus topics and use parse it and hand it over to different set of models. So one of the largest agricultural product companies using Azure Service Bus associated with EZest, where we have leveraged Azure Service Bus as one of the core component of the entire solution. And Event Grid is something the higher version of event-driven services. It is similar to your Apache Kafka, not exactly mapping it, but it's kind of similar functionality where you have topics from different services. You can have the event subscription, as you can see in the diagram as well. You can have custom topics. It is absorbing all your events, and you can process that. Based on that, you can take a certain action on the particular topic. So these are the messaging services. If you have a large portfolio of enterprise apps deployed across multiple Azure services, these are the connectivity backbones you can use. Now, this is one of the very important slide of today's presentation. People talk about which service to use when you are building a cloud first app. So although it is not a authorized documentation from Microsoft, but based on our experience at EJS and multiple discussions with Microsoft stakeholders, we have just prepared a high level list of application components on the left hand side and the suitable equivalent Azure services on the right hand side. So while building this list, we thought of giving more emphasis on Azure PaaS services. So on the right hand side, you can see most of the services are PaaS services or SaaS services rather than core infrastructure services. So for front end, as we discussed, you can use static web app, which is new for your static web applications, or you can use Azure web app. You can also use Azure infrastructure services if you want to host your application on an IaaS server. You want to control the environment. Middleware business logic, you can use Azure API apps or Azure functions, as I showed. Azure logic apps is basically kind of a different connectors used to trigger from one application to another application, passing messages. For that, you can use logic apps. But again, logic apps is not for passing messages, it's doing from some activity or actions. So if you want to trigger something based on certain actions, you can go for Logic Apps. I will not use the word workflow exactly because workflow have a different notion among the developers, but kind of a workflow, the bare minimum backbone of workflow you can see in Logic Apps. dbtr, as I mentioned, there is plethora of data options I have already discussed about. File server. So if you have a NAS on-premise file servers, you can use Azure File Storage, or you can use Data Lake or other big data services to store your files. Files can be video files, audio files, images, everything. Messaging, we saw service bus queues, Azure storage queues for very minimal usage. I will not recommend for enterprise applications. Configuration settings and app configuration. So there is a Azure application configurator service available where you can put all your application configurations in that services. If time allows, I will show you that as well. All your sensitive keys and secret keys you can store in Key Vault. And logging, exception handling, you can use with Azure Application Insight. So Azure Applications Insight is a holistic monitoring solution. So don't get confused between Azure Monitor and Azure Application Insight. Azure Monitor is the holistic monitoring solution for entire your Azure environment, which covers your application as well as your infrastructure, your network watcher, and all these things. Application Insight is specifically for application. It will help you to analyze the roadblocks within the applications layer. You can do certain tests using Application Insight. Maybe we can have a separate webinar on application. That's a huge topic. Maps you can use for Azure Maps. Search, you can use Azure Cognitive Search, which allows you to build indexing. It does the automatic indexing based on your data, and it's now part of Azure Cognitive Services. Then you have CDN, Akamai CDN, kind of CDN in Azure CDN and Redis Cache for for caching. Again, in today's JavaScript framework, some people may not use CDN. They have their other methodology. Object collection you can leverage as per your need, but these are the core services, commonly services available in Azure for mapping. Identity, you can use Azure AD B2C. You can use Azure Premium, Active Directory Premium subscription for having additional security features like threat protection and everything. Source control, Azure DevOps is there. Deployment, doing CI/CD and testing, you can use Azure DevOps. Email notifications like sending SMS from your web application using Azure. So you have video, no Twilio and SendGrid are same, but these are different SaaS services provider have offered their solutions in Azure, like Mailjet, SendGrid, and different layers are there. So
Vikram, we got about 10 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll park the walkthrough at last. I'll first finish my presentation. I have last few slides, and then we'll spend time on walkthrough.
Sure. Yeah.
Again, take questions as well.
Yeah. I got a couple of questions already. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Now microservices, again, it's a huge topic. So it will be injustice if I give you gyan on microservices in just 2 minutes. But traditionally, we used to have monolithic applications where we have tight dependency on each layer. Now, industry, not only IT industry, but all the industry have came up and they have accepted the microservices model, which are loosely coupled application or services can be leveraged, are scalable and leveraged by different set of applications. Different application platform can consume them. So they want to have a unified approach. And then again, there are multiple players in the cloud space for running microservices. AKS, Azure Kubernetes Services, is now industry standard. So initially, Microsoft had Docker support. We all know Docker is there in the open source world from almost a decade. But now, looking at the features, now the primary stakeholder is Azure Kubernetes Services. Now, Microsoft also have their own services for running microservices like Azure Service Fabric. So I have just at high level, I have categorized that. So if you are having a Linux open source based workload, you can go for Azure Kubernetes Services. If you have Windows, Microsoft specific workload, non-containerized apps, you can go for Azure Service Fabric. It is again stateful. And stateful and stateless, both templates are there. ASMM is Azure Service Fabric Mesh. So in Azure Service Fabric also, you have to create clusters, nodes like you create in pods, you create in Kubernetes services. And then again, there is a complex configuration. So Microsoft took that feedback and they made it developer friendly, and they came up with a pacified version of Azure Service Fabric, which is called as Azure Service Fabric Mesh. And last year, another open source Microsoft supported on Azure, the framework called as Dapper. They have a application model, open source application model, OAM they call it as. So Dapper is also a quite popular model for microservices. You can see a lot of tweets from Maya Prosinovic, who is Azure CTO, talks about the Dapper model. Quickly, security and monitoring services. In the circle, you can see different monitoring and security services like Azure Advisor. Different firewalls are there. Azure Web Application Firewall. You have Azure Sentinel, which is a SITM based model. You can have logs. You have Network Monitor, Watcher for your infrastructure workload. Application Insight, and couple of points I mentioned outside that circle, because those are the issues which we commonly see, due to which we require for a security services in each of the application. So it is highly recommended to go through these points as well and analyze what kind of security mechanism you want in your application, and accordingly you can pick the security and monitoring services. Before wrapping up quickly about Azure AI services, so Microsoft offered a lot of AI services. If you have a chatbot kind of a requirement, if you want to build a conversation platform, you have Azure Bot Services, Bot Framework. If you want to leverage text to speech, speech to text, you have cognitive services, you have cognitive search, as I mentioned already. And Azure Machine Learning Studio, like Synapse Workspace, you have a Machine Learning Studio workspace where you can connect your data, pass your data, write some pre-configured algorithms, predefined algorithms, modify them, and give the output as a prediction URL. And to create all these things easily, Microsoft came up with something called as DSVM, Data Science Virtual Machine. So your Julia, Python, and everything, all the open source workspace for machine learning and AI, already pre-configured, pre-installed on those virtual machines. You just have to spin that virtual machine and start building your data models, building your AI solutions as well. And again, Data Science VM available in Windows and Linux as well.
Sure. Vikram, because you're on this slide, I think I got a question on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
On this slide, have you any use case or any experience that you used Azure Cognitive Services or AI services anywhere, or you proposed in your architecture?
Sure.
Like building chatbot, some of those things, Azure chatbot or something.
Sure. So can we just wrap up the quick walkthrough and I can address that question? I have noted that question. Is that okay? If you can.
Sure.
Okay.
No problem. Perfect. Makes sense. Yeah.
And the citizen developers.
Absolutely fine.
Yeah. So I'll just quickly go through Azure again, Azure portal again. Now let me open Power Apps site. Close right. I'll just give a glimpse of citizen developers. You can see over here.
Yeah, sure. That's cool. Yeah.
So you can see I am in my Microsoft Flow account, Power Automate. So Power Apps and Power Automate, these are the two things. I'll just close the SDK. Yeah. So if I go to home and go to my Flow, I have a flows created over here. What is the use of Flow? So I'll just a little bit zoom this. So you can create new flows over here. It can be UI flows, it can be business process flows. These are the custom templates. There are some predefined templates as well. I'll just give an example. If you want to share an office email attachment to OneDrive, okay? So all that flow customization, you have to do it in this template. So template available for your business scenarios. There are plenty of templates. We can spend an entire day on templates. So there are different categories of templates as well. So if you have approvals, start approval when a new item is added, send approval to follow up email and all those things. So, and email and productivity. So we can create all the workflows from here and we can host it on Azure and we can, plug it. You have AI Builder as well over here. Currently, AI Builder is available in a couple of regions. You may not able to see it. You can build models over here in the AI Builder. So like form recognition and analysis. When I answer Giri's question, I can explain these as well. And if I go over here, my flows, I can see the flows I'm working on. So this is how I can create a simple workflows over here. Even this in UI, I need a premium account. Even if in UI workflow, this is kind of your screen recording. So all the RPA kind of stuff, robotic process automation, you can create from this flows. Now quickly going through Power BI apps, Power Apps. I can create apps over here. So I have different, again, templates available over here. Again, if you see the entire application development is using no code. So I am not going to write any code. I just have to click, I want to run it on tablet or phone, app name, my taste app. And I can start building the entire application. I can drag and drop the features I want to add, and then I can start building my apps and deploying it. Okay, so this is for citizen developers who are not very much familiar with programming languages. I'll just escape. So you can see the environment over here.
So basically, what large RPA platforms will do to legacy systems is what citizen developers can do to their own systems on their own. Oh, that's cool.
Yes, and the beauty of this, you don't have to be a developer by profession. So anyone who have a vision or have an idea can go ahead and
and a day-to-day life problem to solve.
Yes, definitely. Yes. So I'll just quickly go through our summary slide. So we saw different applications and Azure Services Spectrum. We understood what is cloud first application. We saw different tools. Of course, 1 hour is sometimes less time, but definitely we can have a multiple webinars on specific topics. But we try to cover all the spectrum for all type of developers. We also saw the service mapping, how you can use the existing on-premise components with your Azure services, or the application components which you are building for apps can map it to Azure services. And we saw different Azure services can be leveraged like Synapse, Logic Apps, Azure Functions. You can thought of any of your existing application when you deploy it on Azure, rather than taking the same thing over there again, you can use the native Azure services and start building your apps. So that's all I want to share in my presentation. Now I'm open for questions.
Yeah, so the chatbot related question, if you want to share your experience.
Yes.
From there, maybe.
Yeah, so chatbot, yes. So Girish, very interestingly, 2 years ago, rather than 1.5 years ago, everybody started building chatbots. If you see, there was wave on LinkedIn where we used to say every developer, every organization have some chatbot.
Yeah, like a gold rush.
Like a gold rush, yes. And eventually, in last 6 months, it got dropped. But during the pandemic, again, we saw the massive use case and importance of chatbot, because the Apollo hospital, which got built by Microsoft, and then there are plenty of hospitals, okay, because there is of patients, people wanted information. There are travelers across the globe. Some people got stuck in some countries. They need some kind of assistance. So a lot of data were there in scattered places, and people wanted to have a quick information. So the best implementation was a chatbot. And using Power Automate and Microsoft Bot Framework like Q&A Maker, it is very easy. Again, without writing any simple code, if you have data, you can just plug it back to Q&A Maker and build a chatbot on top of it using Lewis Engine. So that is the best use of chatbot. And surprisingly, now people understood that, and Microsoft is also doing a lot of investment and doing enhancement in the existing bot framework as well. Yes.
The other question I received, maybe you answered partly, but I'll still repeat the question. Any architectural experience or trigger point that you could think when people think of using Azure as a transformation platform? So what are those, in your mind?
Yes. So when you talk about chatbot, primarily it may look that someone have a large amount of data and just they are just throwing answer by the bot interpret, but it's not as easy like for the complex enterprise applications, because at EasyEst we built a couple of chatbots and we had very interactive and highly complex chatbots. We have to thought of all the aspects where how people will interact with that chatbot, what kind of end users will be, whether they will be asking questions in the English language or their native country language, whether if we don't have answer or the bot doesn't have answer, what should be the user interface look like, whether it should be a parallel question coming from bot or should we log a service ticket. If we want to log a service ticket to come back and get answer to that particular question, unanswered question, how we can integrate the ticketing platform with bot services, how we can show the greeting cards, small cards, or how we can take the survey poll, get the different responses and do the processing of data, how we can also protect our bots from denial of servicing attacks, because there are massive hacking and security incidents happening, so bots can be also get compromised. So how we can handle that, all those we have to analyze, and accordingly so the core bot framework is already on top of running on top of Azure, but how you leverage the different services, if someone if a bot doesn't want, if a bot doesn't have answer, how that will go back to the big data and search that. So how we can plug the other cognitive services with bot. So that it's a complex part, architecture complex part, and it varies on case to case basis.
This, uh, this is another question.
Yeah.
Sure, sure. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Archana has asked a question. Question has a slightly business context as well, in general. And like, there's a end of. Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Go ahead. The question is on trigger points for getting to Azure.
Trigger points in the sense, why should we go on Azure? Should I?
Generally, yeah, correct.
Yeah, and so I'll relate with the pandemic situation. Right now, we see everyone is working remotely, and we have different collaboration platform. Now, take an example of an COVID hospital. Okay, the normal hospitals are now getting converted to COVID hospitals. Now there is a certain information available with the hospital, which is passed on by the government, and now they have to do the bed management, they have to do the doctor management, shift management for nurses, availability of medicine. In fact, the existing ecosystem may not be scale for that demand, because there is a massive demand of patients. Similarly, for e-commerce site, if or a medical site or medical advisory site, there is a lot of demand happening. So when a demand happens, we need a scalable solution, we need a highly available solution. So what I mean by that, so scalability and high availability are again the trigger points for going on cloud. So on-premise scalability and availability, I'm not saying that it is not at all possible, but on demand within the short span of time. So if I say, okay, for at around 7 p.m. I had only 100 users, but now within 1 hour I have 10 million users. But on premise, I'm certainly not able to scale immediately. I cannot procure that hardware. I cannot update and maintain that environment. And what after the pandemic? So let's say pandemic is over. Now I don't need that hardware. So what should I do with that on-premise investment? So in cloud, I have get the scalability. I can scale up my instances. I can handle that much rigor of data. And when the demand is low, I can tone down my environment. I can save my cost as well. So manual efforts on configuring apps and environments gets reduced. I can quickly spin up virtual machines. If I want to build a dashboard on COVID patients, I have a data. So I just demonstrate the Synapse and the other tools. how you can quickly connect with your data, existing data, how you can quickly handle cognitive services, and how you can even quickly write apps. So tomorrow, let's say I have a deadline of tomorrow. So tomorrow I need to develop an app for internal doctors uses or internal staff uses to see how many numbers of patients admitted, what is the status of patient, what is the availability of beds, and I don't have time to write code, and I cannot go to a company or I cannot go to anywhere, but but I'm a citizen developer now. So with the help of some developer or some company like partners like us, you can quickly, if the deadline is tomorrow, we can quickly build an app using Power Apps and Power Automate and enable them. I think we have built a couple of Power Apps as well. Even we have built some couple of great solutions during this pandemic as well. So these are things to,
Absolutely.
and of course security.
Great. Those have been the questions. Sure. Vikram, there is one more question. Do Power Apps come with source code customization, which can be done at developer end? Let us suppose I want to perform some operation or add some steps which the template doesn't have. Can I add those by getting source code of Power Apps?
Right now, no, because it is formally introduced as no code or low, although I have tag low code. Low code is nothing but just writing some of the connectors, that's it. There is no source code download facility available in Power Apps. But if you are building a bot framework or if you are building a QA Maker bot, yes, you can host it on Azure and it allows you to download the bot source code and modify it. But for Power Apps, right now there is no facility to download the code. And I think that's why they have categorically made the different segregation of developers, bot developers who can build bot using C#. And then there are set of developers who don't know development, maybe because they are not in the development profession, but still want to build apps using, kind of drag drop quick app environment. They can log into Power Apps. They have input drop boxes, couple of buttons. They do the connections and they have common data source and they can start deploying the apps. So that's why right now it is not available.
Sure, thanks. I think that answers Rohan Akotia's question.
Yeah.
So yeah, that ends the questions that I received, about 5 or 6 of them.
Yeah.
And that also, in that case, if there are no more questions, I think we are towards the end of the session.
Sure.
I'll just do a final check on my questions list. No, I think we have answered all of them. So yeah, thank you so much, Vikram, for giving us a good walkthrough here. I think for me, the best part was you talking a little bit about Azure Synapse as well,
Yeah.
because that's still in preview, and talking about citizen developers, because that's going to create a big competition amongst RPA platforms going forward, as well. So we need to watch that space out. Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, those who could attend today. I have received a few messages, so many messages rather, on my personal WhatsApp and LinkedIn, and wherever I had shared the messages that some of them couldn't join because of cyclonic situations in their regions. There was power cut and internet situations. So we'll make this available to all of them on internet link and forward it to them.
Sure,
so thank you so much. I think we are getting some great feedback here. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, and do feel free to reach out to us, Girish. I think you already mentioned your Twitter handle, my Twitter handle.
Yes.
Our team is open for communication. So if anyone have any question, do feel free. Even after webinar is over, you can still connect with us. And do watch the earlier DevOps, and this will be also available to all of you soon.
Yeah. So and absolutely. Yeah. And we are coming up with another session on test-driven development soon. So watch out for that. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, EaseS team, for setting this up. Thank you so much.
Yeah.